Welcome to episode 5 of the Rugby League United Podcast, the sport's biggest names discussing their lives, their career and aspects of their mental fitness too. In the company this week of a true great iconic figure of the legendary Wigan sides of the 80s and 90s, England's most capped forward, a leading coach as well in both codes of the game, and it's Denis Betts. Dennis, great to see you. How are you, first of all?
Good afternoon. I'm very well. I'm really good. Keeping myself busy in this strange time. So I'm pushing towards what the new normal is. I'm just trying to work out what normal is at the moment. But my wife owns a post office and a little shop which has got a cafe connected to it. We've been open for 2 or 3 weeks with takeaways, but the shop's been open. And she's seen as an essential service for the local community. Everybody loves a bit of money at this stage. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but all the old people keep coming and drawing all their money out from the post office. Seems to be the only place they can get it from. But so I've been pretty busy. So it's been nice to be able to serve your community and have some purpose in your day.
Yeah, you've been embracing yourself. I guess one of the aspects of well-being that is giving. You've been out and about on foot, helping people out. You've been telling me.
Well, I've always been quite. One of the strengths of my mental health has been that selfless acts of kindness. It's just that paying forward kind of mentality. It's nice to tag a word to it now and say that that's what it's there for. But I think it's something that's always been in my character, where I've been happy to help people, be around people, do things for them. And at the moment, like you say, it's just that if you can look after the people around you, then hopefully they'll look after you. But it's not. You want it to be a two-way street, but first of all, it's got to come from somewhere. It's got to start somewhere. And I've never minded being the instigator of a conversation, of a giving act, of doing something or letting people know. The random things of standing in a shop and somebody needing some change and you're leaning around and going, yeah, it's 10p, yeah, just put that to it. It's one of those strange things that I've always seemed to have done. I don't know. I must have come from my mum or something like that. I don't know why.
There's so much I want to talk about you over the next half hour or so. Both from your life as a player, a coach, a person, and a young lad from Salford. A little bit of that young lad just came out as well. So let's start at the beginning. How was it for you? How was it for you growing up and your formation?
Growing up, it's one of I can put in a couple. You know when you come from somewhere and everybody asks you like, "Oh, do you ever go back?" I never go back to where I came from. It's one of those. I don't think I really enjoyed my childhood. I grew up in a council house in Clarendon, which is not far from Salford precinct. It wasn't. I'd been moved from Broughton. I was a young lad, and it was like my dad was a pretty abusive fellow. He was never around, and my mum struggled. I had a real good group of people. My grandparents on my mum's side were really a lot like my parents as well. I adored them. They adored me. My granddad bought me my first pair of boots. It was that kind of stuff that in my life. And I was very fortunate I had some athletic ability. I don't know where it came from. Oh, well, I do know it. My mum was quite tall. My dad was a good footballer, apparently. And I just had athletic ability. I was quick. I could run. And my evasion skills and toughness grew up on the fact of being chased by gangs and not getting caught. And if you did get caught, being able to take a beating. So that's how you grew up in Salford at those stages of my life. So, like I say, all the evasion skills have been chased or by the police or by opposition kids your same age. And that's where I grew up, and it was a resilient, tough upbringing, and wasn't great at school. The school wasn't great with me either. Looking back on reflection, I always thought that it was me that just didn't like school. I had no real authority figures to make me go to school. My mum was she did 2 jobs, sometimes 3, working, cleaning, keeping food on the table. My dad was never around. It was my choice to go to school. I never went really a lot of time. Used to play truant quite a bit, and gang of lads that I was with. So I left school with no GCSEs, no levels. But the school itself, when I look back, nobody really did. There was nothing that wanted to attract me to the school or keep me there, apart from one teacher as well. And everybody makes it back to that one person who was a sports teacher that wanted me and sent me to trials for football. He sent me to trials for rugby. And I think sport was the thing that kept me on track really, and was it's a big statement, but like sport was one of those things that's probably might have saved my life a long way.
How close did you come to choosing football rather than rugby?
I don't think it was my choice. If ever, it's always a nice line. If it's like, oh yes, as a 16-year-old boy, I'm sat there going, do I want to be a Manchester United footballer or do I want to play for Wigan? It wasn't my choice. I was mad football. Rugby was one of those things that I was pretty good at. Where it came from, there was no rugby in my school or my area. I was quick, I could run, I was tough as a 14, 15, 16-year-old. And a fella called Kevin Devine, whose sons both played professionally. Sean Devine went on and represented St Helens, but his dad Kevin wasn't the coach, he was sort of like the manager of Lee Rangers at that time. And he saw me play for Lancashire when I was under 13s. And he came to me after and asked me if I wanted to go and play for Lee Rangers. I played football on a Sunday afternoon for my local team in Clarendon, and I was just mad on football. We lived like 15 minutes walk away from Old Trafford. I used to go down there. I was Manchester United mad at that stage in my life, and used to sneak in when it was standing at Stretford End, and I used to mind cars along the way all across the roads up to Old Trafford when I was a kid. And he offered me an opportunity, and I said, well, my mum doesn't drive, my dad's not about, and I can't really do it. He said, I'll come and get you. I said, what? He said, yeah, I'll just come and pick you up on a Sunday. And for me at that stage, Lee was a million miles away. It was like 20, it wasn't just 15 miles down the road of East Lancs. It was another place. It was a million miles away. I was never going to get there. But Kevin came on a Sunday, picked me up early, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, drove me to Lee or Woolston or St Helens or Warrington or wherever we were playing. I'd get out of his car. I'd go and I'd play for Lee Rangers. I'd get in the car, no shower, straight back, play football in the afternoon. And I wouldn't see him till the following week. And this fella, he wanted nothing back from it. He just wanted me to come and play. I was a good player at the time as well, but he turned up every single week and took me to play rugby league. There was no rugby league in Salford for me at that time. Schools were on strike. There was no school sport. But I was playing football for a local team on a Sunday afternoon. Didn't want to give that up. So he picked me up early and dropped me back off, and I played football in the afternoon. And that was like the instigator of where rugby league came from in my life. It was something that somebody was willing to put themselves out for at that stage, and I was good at it. I was pretty good at that, but I always wanted to be a footballer. That was where I'd always seen myself. And I came through and I played for the Northwest, and I played in regional finals. I played for Salford schoolboys in the English schools competition. We got through to the semi-finals. And I thought I was okay football. I played for Manchester United schoolboys. I got played for Manchester United's B team, trained with their youth team, played a game with their youth team. I was looking to get an apprenticeship, and everything was geared towards this apprenticeship at Manchester United. At the time, they took on a lad called Daniel Graham, who was a Welsh international, and went on to play for Manchester United's first team. But the other kid that they took on instead of me was a lad called Mark Robbins. He went on and had a fantastic career as a footballer as well. Yeah. So I lost out to those two that went on and did okay. And it's only on reflection you look back. Them two being there and me not being taken on was probably the best thing, because I did okay in rugby league. So, and it was the rejection of Manchester United that really left me with nowhere else to go. I got offered a couple of YTSs at that time, which was like £17.50 a week to go and play at Blackburn. And one was at Blackburn, one was at Port Vale. But Wigan offered me £5,500 to sign as a 16-year-old kid, and my mum never seen that kind of money in her life, or I'd never heard of it. They wrote me a check out for £5,000. So that's what made me decide. That was the swinger. So we say at 16 years of age, being offered £5,500 signing on fee in 1986. When I lived in a council house, I'd never seen that kind of money. I was looking to see what the £10 note looked like, never mind anything else.
You signed for a Wigan club who were owning the sport at the time. What was that like for a teenager walking in, being surrounded by immediate greatness?
I didn't know that as well. And I think that might have been one of the strengths as well. I didn't know anything about rugby league really. Spent my life immersed in football again, and I'm not. I'd never been coached. I was a professional rugby league player. I never had a coach.
Mm-hmm.
There was none of this talent ID. There was none of this working through academies and collecting it. I played football on a Saturday afternoon. I played rugby on a Sunday morning. I played football on a Saturday afternoon. That was my life from being 13 years of age to 16 years of age. Along the way, I went to a couple of trials, got picked for Lancashire under 16s, got picked for England under 16 schoolboys, played on a Tour de France, got picked up by a scout. That was rugby league. He just came and saw me, picked up the scout, took me to Wigan. I was supposed to have gone to Leeds the day after and Leeds the week after when I went to Wigan. And it just went bang, sign. That's it. And I say, and this podcast is a great one as well because I know you can swear on a podcast. Can I swear on a podcast? Am I allowed to swear, George?
I don't actually know the answer to that question.
But it's only one swear word as well because I'll tell you the best piece of my father came with me to he was around and now and again, and he just seemed to be on the scene when I went to Wigan this one night. So I went to Wigan with my mum. I had my English schoolboys blazer and tie on. I've been to France and played for English schoolboys. So I had a tie and a blazer. I didn't have a school blazer. I never wore one. So I went to Old Central Park, up into the boardroom. My mum looked like she was going on a night out. She never invited to know how to dress. So she got all dolled up for this, like going in to see the board at Wigan. And the board, it was Tom Rathbone, Jack Robbie, Jack Hilton, Maurice Lindsay. And they sat down in this big long chair. I always remember Tom Rathbone had a brandy and was smoking a cigar at the time as well. Also on this boardroom. We love your son. We think you're great. He's great. We're blah, blah, blah. We think it could be a real acquisition to us. So they did this sale, and I'm sat on the other side like this, and I'm not thinking about anything other than that. Wonder what Leo sale I might go to Leeds and see what Leeds have got to say, because there's a couple of scouts that were around. And so they came, and then it was like, so my dad's there talking like he knew what rugby league was. He'd never seen me play all the way through being a schoolboy. And they offered this 5.5. They offered a contract. The contract itself, I won't go into it, but it's supposed to have taken me 20 years to fulfil this. I signed my life away. I had to play so many games to make this money. Played for Great Britain Colts, the old style contract. And but the crux of it all was, we'll give your son a cheque for £5,500 tonight. So I was like, my mum's like, oh. So we'll let you ever think about it. So they left the room. And like I say, the best piece of advice I've ever got off my father, I just sat down and turned around and looked at me and he went, fucking sign it. and that was how I ended up signing for Wigan. So that's the best piece of advice that I got, and that's how I became a rugby league player. And never really looked back. And it wasn't about the fact that it was something that I'd always wanted to do, and I knew who these players were at Wigan at that time. I didn't really know any of the Wigan players. I didn't know. I came downstairs, and I think the conversation, Maurice Lindsay might have said to me, he said, you realise that the great Wayne Pearce runs 5 miles a day to make him great? And I said, well, I'll run 6, Maurice. I didn't know who Wayne Pearce was at that stage in my life. And I should have done. He was like, he'd just toured with the greatest Australian touring side of history. And been one of the players of the tour, but I didn't know who these people were. So in some ways, that was the freedom that I had, just to go and charge around and be the best person that I could be. And I did. And I was very fortunate as well, because I latched onto a couple of good people. I signed one of the lads who played with me as an amateur was Ian Gildart. So we and Ian Gildart had come through the same system together. We were really good mates. And he was a good trainer. He was a really good player, fantastic player. And we got together, we trained and we kept going. And then I was really fortunate within the second year that when Ian Roberts signed, and Graham Lowe sort of pushed me towards Ian Roberts, and we trained together a little bit. And I got friendly with Ian Roberts, and we did some training together. And he was only a young man at this time as well. But I saw what training could give you, and what having a good lifestyle could give you as well. So I threw myself into that side of it. And then on the back of that, I became really good friends with Andy Goodway. I think it was my work ethic that attracted me to these two people as well, because I was fearless, but I was a very good trainer, worked really hard. Didn't think I was the most talented in the team or around the team, but never wanted to be beat, never wanted to be second at anything, and wanted to really work hard, whether it be in the gym or on the field. And it's one of those where I used to sit in those little groups when you first went to a professional club and you'd do pre-season training, and it'd be like, right, you sit back, youngster, I'll take this one. So we'd do our 400-metre runs, and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to win this one as well as the last one. You end up getting offside with some people, but the people that matter sees that little thing in you. And I was fortunate the coaches saw that, and in Graham Law at the time, John Money later on when he came, but more the fact that it was Andy Goodway as well. Andy Goodway sort of, who had this reputation for being standoffish and a little bit arrogant and aggressive, but he wasn't never like that with me. Full of advice. There was no shortcuts in him. There was loads of hard work. It was all about your attitude, all about your application. Sometimes a little bit too aggressive, but that was what carried his reputation on. But I found the man himself, and he's still one of my best friends now, to be somebody that was a guiding light for a 16, 17-year-old kid that didn't really know what to do with his life or didn't know how to be a professional sportsman.
Yeah. On a recent episode of this Rugby League United podcast, Reece Lynn spoke of being that 17-year-old breaking in at Hull FC and talked about the crippling self-doubt that he felt, but because it was such a macho dressing room surrounded by Lee Radford and all the big guys, he felt he couldn't show any weakness. He couldn't tell anyone how he was feeling, and he said he didn't want to give the coach any reason not to select him. Now, I'm guessing, and I guess I'm judging, but going back even earlier into your era, that would have been even more the case, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, it was survival of the fittest. It was that, and that for some degree, that's what sport has hurt itself with as well, because it was built on this like live and die kind of mentality when it shouldn't have been like that. And it's not like that really. There are always people around that, but without naming names, like that Wigan dressing room was brutal. They say, if you wanted to be in there, you had to be more than you actually felt you could be. You couldn't show any weakness. You couldn't, any chink in the armour you could be infected pretty quickly by some pretty ruthless tongued people. So you had to be able to stand up for yourself and be resilient to not just name calling, but lots of other areas of your life that got opened up quite easily. And again, this is one of those fortunate things about me, because I always used to, because I wasn't from Wigan, I didn't live in Wigan at the time, I had to leave. And my early stages of my career was spent on a bus, on a train. And that's one of those things that showed that my attitude towards wanting what I wanted as well. And there's lots of analogies out there and lots of stuff that carries it. But I had to I went to college and I had to effectively get on a bus before 4 o'clock. So finishing college at 3:30, be on a bus on number 26 on the East Lancs Road, the A58 to the top end of where Salford University is now. The bus left at 4:10. If I wasn't on that bus, I didn't get into Wigan bus station in time to run down to Central Park to be on time for training. And I was given no leeway for being late or not turning up. You had to be there, because everybody else who had mums and dads that were taking them or lived close by, they all wanted what I wanted.
Yeah.
And nobody was going to give them, they wasn't going to let me have it just because I had it a little bit tougher. So I had to get there. But on the other side of it, I wasn't in that bubble of being around that teammates all the time. And so I came in, did my job, made sure I did it well, worked hard. I had a street kid mentality. I was pretty tough. I think that's one of those kind of things. I don't mean tough as being a fighter. I just had and I don't know where it came from. And you can talk about resilience and mental toughness and how you build it. It was just something that I always felt that was part of me. And I can't remember not having it ever, from being 11 years of age, when I have some recollection of playing sport and being around sport and being at school or playing playing internationals at the back of a football internationals against a wall with 6 or 7 older lads, or playing edgy at the back of the house against in the street. There's always been that little bit of mental and competitive edge to what I had. I don't know where it came from. It's not that I had any heroes. I didn't have any posters on my wall. I was a Manchester United fan, but I wasn't the Manchester United fan that had stickers or posters or collected name cards. I just had something in me there and it held me in good stead. Because the first year when I played for Wigan at 16, I made my debut when I was 16. And 17, I think it was 16, 17, in an early round of Lancashire Cup or the John Play Trophy or whatever it was. And then Ian Gildart and myself were working together and working who was going to take the first step forward. And I got injured. And Ian went on and ended up playing and being in that World Club Challenge team. He was on the bench. He never didn't make the field. But he also went to Wembley that year in 1988. And me and him were very close. He went along as a squad member in 88. I went down on the bus and watched the game and joined them and left earlier than everybody else that was involved in the first team squad. But I had to cope with that kind of rejection as well, through injury and working through it again and coming to the other side of it and ending up achieving the things that I'd set myself without having any goals. I just wanted to be better every single time that I trained. I didn't want to feel like I let anybody down. I had a real mental toughness that probably came from my upbringing or where I came from to keep working that through.
Just one further question on that. I'm struck kind of by that macho dressing room that we talk about then, when it was impossible to talk, and how different it is now, how the awareness on mental health and fitness is different, and how there are organisations like Rugby League Cares, like State of Mind, like Sporting Chance. Everywhere you look, there are avenues to help people if they require it. Going back to that dressing room where you couldn't show any weakness at Wigan, if there was all that I've just outlined, if all that was available then, would you guys even have actually wanted it? Would you have been aware of mental health?
You want it now because of your understanding and reflection on those kind of things as well. So yeah, now I believe that it'd have been great. But that also, on the back of that, some really good financial advice would have been great back then as well. Somebody telling me to save a bit, all those little things that you think back that you don't need. It was of its time, and sport was of its time at that stage. And we know now, looking back, and we see some of the stuff with injuries that occur, and brain injuries, and motor neuron disease, and all the stuff that's going around. Is it through hitting the ball? Is it through being hit in the head? Where does it come from? We don't. But it was of its time, and that was the way sport was. It was the Alex Murphy, it was the ruthless, it was the brutality of the half-time talk. I went back to school in 40, got a degree in elite sports coaching when I was 40 to Lancaster University, and I went back and I taught myself to understand why I did what I did and why I enjoyed what I did, and the mentality of it, and understand all that. It's what Alex Ferguson did early on in his career, what Alex Murphy did. That doesn't seem like coaching to me, but they were really successful coaches. The autocratic and the abuse that went along with coaching, and everybody says, "Oh, you need to get stuck into. You need to get." I know that there's no benefit in that because now of my education and understanding of sport. But it doesn't mean that some people don't think that that's still the way you should go. And the understanding of like what experiences you occur and not my experiences, I can help you because I can mentor you and I can talk it through. But you will only ever get true understanding and when you've had that experience. You might be guided a little bit easier towards those experiences by the information I give you or the way that I can talk about it. But you'll never experience what I experience. That's my experiences. And they made me resilient. They made me who I am. I can talk about them and we can have conversations about them. I like to equate it to the fact that I can go on the internet now and I can teach you how to do a triple back somersault off a diving board. I can teach you how to do that because I know how to coach. So, but I can read about it. I can understand the movement patterns of it. I can understand where your hips need to be, where your hands need to be, what you need to do with your head. But I can't tell you how it feels because I've never been on that diving board. But I can tell you how certain things feel. But you don't appreciate the way I feel because of my experiences.
Yeah. You know
I can have
what?
a better understanding. I'll feel closer to it because I can relate to it because I've been there. But they're still my experiences and not yours.
You know, I could completely relate to what you just said there. And a lot of the work I'm doing now in mental health, and when I'm talking to people and presenting with people on mental fitness and mental health, and I kind of have that nagging doubt in that I'm not qualified to do this. Who am I to talk to you? And then I remember, actually, the experience I've had on my mental health journey, I know what it's like to be in a really bad hole. I've experienced, a suicidal depression so bad that I wanted to end my own life. I know what that feels like. So I can talk to you about it. I might not be a doctor, but I can tell you how it feels. And if you're feeling anything like that, then I get it. And I guess that's kind of what you're saying.
I can relate to it and we can understand each other on that level, but the subtle differences are always there because those are my experiences. What you can tell me is how you coped with it, and I might be able to take some of those coping mechanisms. I might be able to take a little bit of your journey and try and see if it helps me. But then I can get fed up with it because it doesn't, or I might not want to stick at it as much. That's why some addicts never stop. They stop taking, but they're still addicts, and some carry on taking even and that because some of them learn from other people's experiences and their own and take those lessons and move them forward. And has been one of the great strengths of my journey along the way is that, I've never been really angry about what happened. I've thought back on this a lot of times and I've let it go. It's it doesn't affect the past. Doesn't make me who I am. I make me who I am today. The experiences I've had have helped me get to this point and understand who I am. They don't make me who I am because I had abusive father doesn't make me an abusive father. So I don't understand that relationship there because it's not the experience that I have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I chose not to be like that because I didn't like it, because I didn't want to be part of it. And they're the choices I have. I know I was going between stimulus and response. What makes me who I am is a choice.
Yeah.
And you can understand when you sit down and talk to somebody and know that how they have got to that point and how desperate things can be, but what kind of people have they had around them to be able to call on? Have they got anybody to call on? And then you feel that that's my responsibility to offer myself. If somebody wants to take it, then they can take it.
Yeah.
So that's what I like about when I say about the giving side of it as well. It's always that kind of, I'd like to feel, even though I don't sound it, I sound like somehow. You open the door and see your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your girl, one of your girls is at the door, and you go, "Hello." And they say he talks like, he's not putting it on. He talks like that all the time. It's like, I'm not being angry. I just sound like this all the time. Offering yourself to people in a genuine way, people can sense it and understand it. And I think that's one of the strengths that I've had, that I feel that I've cultivated friendships and people who have been around me and know that I'm pretty trustworthy, and that I'd like to think that anybody can call on me for anything. And that's part of the last 4 or 5 years on the edge of my coaching and working through the coaching system, and what I've done is that I can relate back to a lot of people, and hopefully they can understand that I'm there not to just talk to them about rugby, but I'm there to help them if they need anything along the way.
Yeah. I mean, we've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but that's good. That's what I want this podcast to be, and exploring little things like that. And I think that was very powerful. A lot of that, and I can sense talking to you that your circle of trust has always been something that you've really valued in life.
Well, I'll tell you something, what I realised a long time ago, and I think I got this from my granddad more than anything else as well. I think along the way he said, I'd rather love and lose than never love. It's like, so you've got to be willing to give yourself and then hurt along the way. And coaching's like that. You can trust the players all you want to give you the delivery that they give you, but sometimes they don't mean to not play well. Sometimes they don't play well because it's a situation. Doesn't mean that they don't you shouldn't trust them to do those things, or you shouldn't give yourself freely. I think that's one of those things where I've always felt that if you want to take the opportunity to hurt me in whatever way, then you will do that. But it doesn't stop me wanting to give you the opportunity to be the better person or be a better person because of it. I think that's one of those lessons in my life, and I think it came through my family and people around me that I've never really minded getting hurt in that sense. Because, like I say, it's a shallow kind of person that guards himself and won't give of anything, and be afraid of saying something wrong or looking a fool. Like I say, I've got 5 daughters. I look foolish every single day. They can take the mick out of me, and I have no foot to stand on at all. So I just have to roll with it.
So what? And I love the way that you've had such a successful playing career, and we're not really talking about stuff like that. That's really nice and refreshing. You've mentioned.
I don't want to talk. Well, I don't really want to talk about the.
No, we don't have to.
Finals and the 28 winners' medals I've got, or the Man of Steel, or the England captain of at Wembley and walking out of Wembley in front of England as the captain in the World Cup final, coaching a team to the World Cup final, and I don't want to talk about that. Those things are important.
But you know what though? Actually, the one thing I do want to make sure we don't skip past is that captaining England in a World Cup final, and I guess. I mean, in terms of mindfulness, were you able to live in that moment at the time and appreciate what a major thing was? Or is it only now when you're looking back thinking, blimey, that was big?
Well, I had a conversation. We talked about when I first started as Wayne Bennett's assistant, and we played in France. I think we played in France in a warm-up game, and I presented the shirts to the debutants of that day, the first time they played for England and that kind of stuff. Luke Gale might have been one of those players, and a couple of that, I can't remember who were now. And I spoke about the fact that now the number and the heritage number and how long the game was, and people, and like 300 and 400 people over a couple of 100 year period of time, how massive that was to be a part of that group, and what it meant to my mother more than anything else. And it was more for her and those things like that along the way, and the appreciation of what I achieved. And looking back on my career, the highlight of my career was probably in Wembley's and Challenge Cup finals and Man of Steel, and playing the game and loving the game. But walking out in front of England in a World Cup final, at that moment I didn't realise what it was on reflection. And only 2 people have ever done that. I've walked out in front of England at Wembley in a World Cup final. One of them is Bobby Moore, and the other one is Denis Betts.
Wow.
And I spoke to this room, and not one of them knew that I'd even captained England in a World Cup final. They knew who I was. They knew I played for Great Britain, but they didn't know that. And do you know why that was? Because we lost. And that's how close your life. So when you want to drag up something that can mean, my life could have been completely different if England had won the World Cup final that day. And it was that. And I got the job by default, in a sense. I was vice captain to Sean Edwards, and Sean got ill during the World Cup when I took over as captain. And we mulled our way through, and we got to the final. And it was, I regret the day because I thought they played okay, but we didn't play well at all. I think most of the team just had, and we only lost by, I think it was a score anyway. But we didn't take our opportunity, and things could have looked so different for the game in this country had we been able to perform on that day. And I think that's the one regret about it. Doing it and being part of it for me will always hold something that I cherish, whether everybody else knows about it or not, or you can walk into a room and nobody really knows what you've done. Then it doesn't matter, because I stood at the front of that team and walked out at Wembley. And my mum was there, and she appreciated the fact of all those cold days stood on the side of football matches, smoking the cigarettes and not really watching the game. and being committed to showing some level of support to what I wanted to do. She was there, and that was important to me. But like I say, that highlight of those days, and when you're on reflection, it's a nice thing to talk about. And it's a nice thing to have a conversation like that. It's like,
yeah, of course.
nobody really knows that. And I can't remember who told me the trivial fact of a pub quiz that nobody ever gets right because nobody knows who I did that. So it's a nice pub quiz question.
You've given us a great insight into the type of person you are and the type of coach you are. I want to ask you one question about, you mentioned Wayne Bennett, working as number 2 to the England coach Wayne Bennett, who is a very unique type of individual and type of coach. I had the privilege of doing his first broadcast interview on English soil when he came over, and it was a great challenge because I knew what he was like. He hates the media. He doesn't like doing interviews, and I saw that as a great challenge. And I had half an hour with him, and after it, he shook my hand and said, "I really enjoyed that," and that was great.
He doesn't hate the media. He doesn't hate the media. I don't think Wayne Bennett could hate anything. It's one of those kind of. He's a fantastic bloke. And on reflection today, it's like it was. I've been around him and knowing what he'd done and where he'd been, and just listening to little quips. It wasn't anything revolutionary, or there wasn't anything that was different. It was just him. He had a persona, and the players wanted to be in his team. They wanted to play for him. He made them feel special. He wanted them to be the best that they could be, and he carried himself. There was nothing extraordinary in the way he coached or what he did. He was an extraordinary man because of what he'd done and where he was, but there was nothing like no Svengali kind of application of some weird and magical skills that he had. He was just a fantastic bloke, and I don't think he disliked anybody. He liked to get his point across, and he always felt that people would like to twist his point a little bit.
Yeah,
and that's why he had that little bit of mistrust. But I don't think he hated anybody.
Well, what he said to me, Dan, was that he would rather be at home in the company of his animals than other people because they don't speak back to him. I sensed he liked his own company more than that of other people sometimes.
He loved the players. He would immerse himself in the team. That was his style. I say, all the coaches that I'd been a part of, I'd coach sits at the front of the bus, and it was one of those kind of, I don't know, it's just an unwritten rule of where the segregation was when you went, and Wayne was in the middle of everybody. It's got around his core of players. He made sure that all the players he was part of their inner circle, so he could influence them, and that was his strength. His strength was that he had great people skills. And as you said then, he's really likable. Once you get beyond that persona that has been painted about him in the press, and he has cultivated it himself a little bit. He's not stupid. He knows how to play the game very, very well, and being successful has helped him do that. But he's a fantastic bloke. I thoroughly enjoyed the time I spent with England, with the players, with the staff, with Paul Wellens, with Chris Barron, with Jamie Peacock. See, I knew Jamie to talk to and be around, but I spent a time for a World Cup, and that time, fantastic bloke, love him to bits. He's a great inspirational character, and it was that kind of time as well that I got to enjoy something again different in my career, because the greatness of Jamie Peacock came through at that when I totally got into coaching, and his career seemed like a massive career. But then I looked back and realised I'd actually been coaching 19 years. So my last game in Ango was in 2002, and I went to grand final when Bradford absolutely annihilated Wigan.
Yeah.
And so that was my last. So for all the great moments, there's been a couple along the way that the Challenge Cup. I said we won't talk about the rugby, but
no, you can.
In the cafe, in the cafe that we, my wife runs. Well, it's ours. I have the building, the cafe that is ours, and I'd time on my hands, so I've been helping out. We opened it to do takeaways, and somebody came in it's in Parbo, not far from Wigan. And somebody came in and said, "Oh, I was watching that the other day on TV. That when Sheffield battered you, I won 8 grand finals. I've won in grand finals." And then everybody comes in here now and just shouts about Sheffield to me. You can't help themselves. There was one moment along the way that jump on top of you, and everybody looks so. They don't rerun Sky have not rerun all the winning games of Wigan winning the Challenge Cup final, but they keep playing that Sheffield game. Can't get away from it.
When you were a player, what was your view of coaches? And I asked that because on an early episode of this Rugby League United podcast, Earl Crabtree said he knew very early that he would never want to be a coach because he didn't like their attitude or the way they were.
Well, if I'm honest about Earl, he struggled to be a player, if I'm honest. So, so he didn't have much choice along the way, did he? Being 6 foot on probably helped him. He had no other choice. But and a haircut like that.
How did you view?
It sort of came along the way that I not even view coaches. I was really fortunate in a couple of senses. Like Graham Lowe was a revolutionary kind of coach when he first came in. I mean, like he took that team of Wigan from the '86 when they annihilated everybody but lost in the Challenge Cup to Oldham, and then turned it again. And we used to love not being scored against. It was one of those mindset shifts of how he wanted players to defend, and it was an attitude thing. It was an understanding of what your best looked like. I know we had a lot of good players and we trained a little bit differently, but we trained that way to be better defensively. So Graham came in with that strong attitude, having worked at Manly and been strong in the Australian game. And then when John came in as well, again, he'd worked with great players. He understood what attitude was required to maintain a consistent level of performance. And that's what he drove it through training and an application. So there was a great desire for them to teach the people around them to make them better. I think that's what I enjoyed about coaching. And then, see, Andy Goodway was a fantastic coach, a bit misunderstood along the way, but he understood the ability to work hard and what people, how you needed to apply yourself to be better. He struggled with people. If he didn't have to coach people, he'd be a fantastic coach. But that's a sort of prerequisite to being a good coach. And it's sort of something I stumbled into. I was doing a little bit of it at the time, taking a couple of badges towards like the late 90s, early 2000s, and I ended up a clause in my contract to be able to, after I finished playing at Wigan, if I wanted to, I could take over and work in the academy and coach the academy. So with that, when that was put into my contract, I thought, well, I'll do something. I worked with Lancashire. I went on a couple of training camps. And the best thing that happened to me when I came, was David Waite.
Yeah.
David Waite being involved with England at the time, and he was a coach that had applied principles through Newcastle and worked the way he worked in Australia to highlight the areas of coaching that nobody else looked at. And it wasn't just about being a good player. It wasn't about understanding the game. It was about being able to spot the ability in somebody to get better. It was then applying the skills to make them better, and then walking out of the room knowing that even if they'd won or they'd lost, they were actually better because of the skills you'd have actually given them. And that took a lot of dedication and understanding of what a coach is. A coach is not somebody who's just a great player. And when I finished playing, I went back to school. I started taking badges. I didn't want to be a head coach at that time. And then the opportunity when I first finished was I was an international player, played at Wigan, had a great, stellar career that I probably could have put my hand up and took over somewhere or taken a job and worked as a head coach straight away. But then I realised that I wanted to make this a career. So I went back to the drawing board, started doing coaching courses, started looking at psychology, started looking at physiology, started applying an understanding of what the body goes through and how to make it better and stronger and fitter and faster. So that understanding of every single component that goes into creating an athlete, not just being able to X's and Y's and dots and crosses. So it was a start of a journey, and I was fortunate enough that when I did get the opportunity, I was in a strong environment. I was in a comfortable environment because I was still at Wigan. It wasn't a completely alien place to be. It was hard the first 6 months because I was still in the mindset of a player, and not being able to play was really tough because I felt, as you all do, that I could do better. I should be in the team. I should be I can be a better player than this. Than what's been shown. I should be playing. And the hardest day of that time was when Wigan beat St Helens in the Challenge Cup final in Edinburgh. That was my first year of coaching and working with Stuart Vapour. And I felt like I could have made that team. I should have been on that team. I should have played in that day. And that was the hardest part of when I realised I'd finished. But on the back of that, what I had as well, I cultivated a nice little team, and where I was working with a group of 18-year-olds and 21-year-olds, and I started getting the addiction of actually helping and improving them as a group. And that became really infectious for me, and that's where an understanding of wanting to coach came from.
I just want to ask you a couple more things.
Does that make sense?
No,
I don't know if I babbled on a little bit there, but
no, it makes
was
complete
great. It was
sense.
being involved with that young group helped detach me from being a player.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I realised it was more important. And we go on about when I first started, and what I didn't recognise when I took over the 18th, the game had changed completely in that sense. Like, I'd lived in a bubble for 18 years. I'd been a player, which was like I need to be fit, I need to be strong, I need to be healthy to do my job as well as I could. So it was about me. Then it wasn't. I had 30-odd kids, and some of them had issues. The mum and dads, some of them were cheating on their girlfriends, or some of them were cheating on each other's girlfriends, and it was causing trouble within the team. And I had one lad who was taking an acne drug at the time that had a tendency to cause suicide as well. So his mum was worried. So I think I wasn't just a coach, I was actually a social worker. And it became how important a role my life had become to that group of people, because where they saw me within that point was somebody that they wanted to rely on, somebody that they wanted to trust, not just the kids themselves, but the parents. And that sort of made me take a step back and going, actually, I'm not teaching rugby here, I'm actually helping these kids become a little bit better at everything. And hopefully that is something I was able to do.
Your time as coach of Widnes, I would imagine was similar in terms of having to look after player welfare, because that was a sustained period of financial uncertainty at a club that at times could have got out of business, and players would have been worried for their livelihoods and would have come to you for support.
Yeah. Well, I was a fixer of broken toys for a long time. So anybody that got broken by another club, they always seem to end up at my club. So it was like putting people back together, giving them some belief, understanding that they can be better. And it took time, it took energy, it took a lot of effort. We didn't have a massive amount of staff. We had no resources. The hardest part period of that was going from being, well, I'd say semi-pro, but it wasn't even that when I first got at Widnes. It was just very, very, I'd say amateurs again, but that was the slant on the amateur side. It was completely broken. And to put it back together, and in the midst of all that, try and take it into a full-time environment, try and do that while they were ripping the pitch up and putting a 4G pitch down for the first time, having no training venue whatsoever, nobody willing to sign for you, having a budget. Everybody else thought he had a budget of 1.6, 1.7 million pound, and spending just under 800,000 quid that first year. It was nearly half of what anybody else was spending or was anywhere near. So it was a tough initiation. But what I could see in that group and the group below them, and understanding the game, was that given a little bit of time, and what the licensing gave me an opportunity to bury myself away from all the criticism and all the belief that this team was Widnes and should be winning World Club Championships again. Was the fact that next year I could pick him up, I could bring him in, I could develop him. If we need to get better at certain things, and I need to take the scoreboard away from it, which most of the press didn't understand. I needed to break the game down into a way that we needed to look at foreign games. Defensively, we need to get better. We need to have less points scored against us. We need to score more points, which sounds really simple, but that doesn't mean you win. So we had a bit of a philosophy there, which was like winning while we were losing, which was what could we get out of this game to make us better when the scoreboard wasn't on our side. And I think if you can do that, you can keep a job for 8 years that nobody thinks you should. So yeah, I love my time there. I think it taught me lots of lessons, and it did teach me anything that I didn't know about the sport already. So when I lost a job or the criticism that I'd had along the way, you know what I mean, that's the nature of what sport is. And the bloke who has nothing else in his life apart from his team, he can shout and ball all he wants at the weekend because that's his way of escaping. That's his mental release. If I'm the, it doesn't make me any less because I'm the point of his anger. Yeah, even though I didn't miss a tackle or drop a ball, I can be the point of his anger. Even though I haven't got any money to spend, I can be the point of his anger so that he thinks that I'm not spending any money. The reality is that you don't really want to know what's behind the curtain because then you stop being a fan. Once you know what's behind the curtain, it becomes too real. I think that's what sport is. It gives you that limit to take away from what your life is to escape for your team for that moment. And who am I to take that away from people by telling them the truth? Which is that this team's never going to win anything at the moment. We need some support. We've got no money. We had our best year that Widnes had. I think it was the year, not the year we just beat Catalans at Catalans the year before. We had our best year ever in about 35 years. And our support base went down. Our season tickets went less because the end of the season hadn't been good enough. We should have won more games in the playoffs. It was that kind of mentality that I didn't understand. 35 years, highest finish, best performances, but that didn't matter because we weren't the World Club champions.
What's your outlook and perspective on life right now? What is it that drives you forward each day? And are there still things career-wise that you want to achieve?
Oh yeah, I wanted the moment that the beauty of being involved at Newcastle is that it's a breath of fresh air. The whole region, they love the game. The amateur game up there is vibrant and it's exciting, and the club itself has got an owner that's ambitious. It's not in it for himself. It's not in it for an ego. He wants the area and the club to do well, the region to do well. There's just a feeling in the place of an excitement that if something could click and the right people could be involved and the opportunities fall right, a little bit of luck, along with a lot of hard work, then it could turn into something that's really special. I think that's one of those things that drives me at the moment is that I'd like to see Newcastle in the Super League again. I know Gates said last time, but I'd like to see Newcastle Thunder in the Super League. I think I can help that and achieve that with already a great number of hard-working, talented people that are already involved at the club. I hope I can take my expertise and give that to them, and hopefully it helps develop into something more. I'm also mentoring a couple of squash players at the moment. Got Commonwealth Games coming up, and they're both ambitious and want to be part of that. I'm working with a couple of squash coaches as well, and that from my understanding of resilience and application of coaching and spending time with them, talking through their experiences and putting mine forward and hoping that we can find a way for them to navigate their coaching careers and become better coaches. Doing a little bit of stuff in football with mentoring some heads of youth at a couple of lower division soccer teams, football teams. So listening to them and their start of their journey and then helping them out and understanding where I was at that point, what I think I should have done better, what I thought I did well, and just being a guide and a mentor to a number of people along the way, and just coaching as well. I love coaching. I love seeing people get better. I've got a fantastic family. I've got 5 daughters, and my oldest girl's I've got 2 granddaughters that are they live in Seattle at the moment. It's pretty hard and both are locked down as well. But I'm hoping that we saw them last year. I was hoping to get over there again this year, and they came here last year. I was hoping to get over there and see them. He's still there. There you
go. Yeah.
And it was so. My eldest daughter, with my second marriage, has just moved to London. She's going a career down there, spending time around her, helping her develop her career in the industry that she loves. And there's lots of things. I mean, just like I said, 2-3 years ago, I bought a post office. It's a 350-year-old building. So spending time renovating that. I thought I'd have a job to go alongside it, which was coaching witness. Well, that sort of fell away, which threw me into this a little bit. I'm just having a bit of fun with that, really. But it's not. I've had my moment in the sun, so to speak, George. That's that kind of stuff, and I can appreciate that now on reflection. Like I say, 50-year-old Paul who sits back and feels really grateful for being involved with the players that I was involved with, being involved with the team that I was involved with. So like when you look back and you talk about the players that I had the honour to be around, your Andy Gregg, your Sean Edwards, your Andy Farrells, your Phil Clarks, your Dean Bells, your Joe Lydons, your Gene Miles, your Martin Fire, your Jason Robinsons, your Vika Chugamalas, your Greg Alexanders, your Stephen Kearneys. So I played in teams with those people that went on to be greats of the game, and internationally as well. Being involved with Darryl Powell and seeing him as a player as well, and how hard he worked. It was a great career, and I had my moment. What I'm most of now is trying to develop other people, see them get better, and that's the joy I get. If a team that I'm involved with can have some success, I think at the moment I'm hoping Simon Finnegan will stay with the team that I'm trying to develop, because he's a fantastic coach. I'd love to see him go on and coach in Super League. I think he has the ability, and with a few years more experience behind him, can go on and be a sensational Super League coach. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Simon Finnegan develops as well.
Dennis, I've absolutely loved talking to you. We're going to leave it there, but you've given us so much insight on so many things, and there's so many life lessons I myself can take away, and hopefully a lot of our listeners. So thank you for sparing your time. It's
one of those strange things as well. It's one that, again, at the beginning of all this, I know you do it as well. I start, and it was something that I was doing anyway, but I saw Matthew Elliott on one of his podcast things, and stuff that he does, the former coach of Bradford Bulls, and he said about winning in the morning and how that helps him so much. And it was something that I had already done and I was already doing, but I think that's a great way to live your life. Think about winning the morning, and then the day can take care of itself. So how you get up, how you drink, how rehydrate yourself, and how you think first thing in the morning. Be thankful for what you are, for what you've got. Appreciate that you can fill your lungs with air, and then go and use the tool that you've been given, which is your body. So win the morning. I think that was something that I worked really hard at every single day. I have to take the dog for a walk, so that's one start of it. So you have to, but winning the day, winning the morning, get up, breathe, appreciate, and rehydrate. I think that's something that everybody can really use as one little tool.
The great Denis Betts on the Rugby League United podcast. We'll be back with more next week.